thing Jose told me was happy birthday, Skip. And I was like, yeah, that certainly was a happy birthday. Boy, that was some finish.
Quite the finish indeed. That was Dusty Baker last night after his team somehow pulled a victory out of the jaws of defeat. Jose Altuve with the walk-off grand slam in the 10th after Carlos Correa tied it with a home run of his own in the bottom of the ninth with 2 outs and 2 strikes. We'll get into plenty of Astros, obviously a lot going on with Major League Baseball. We'll get into all that, maybe even touch a little bit on the NBA and what's going on with the Texans, since nothing's going on with the Texans right now, why that's just a little bit newsworthy. Welcome yet again to another installment of the Fox 26 Sportstream. As always, I'm Sal Manine, sports producer here at Fox 26. We want to thank you for joining us, whether it's on our YouTube channel, our Facebook page, or as always on fox26houston.com. I mentioned the Astros getting a big win last night in the start of what is a rather difficult stretch for them, not in the sense of they're playing all the best contenders or anything like that, but last night's game, the start of 20 games in 20 days for the Astros. Yes, no off days unless there's a rain out or something happens that causes a game to be postponed. The Astros playing every day for the next 3 weeks. Started things off with a win against the Rangers. They're set to get going for game 2. It's just a 2-game set at Minute Maid Park. In just about 5 or 6 minutes from now, Zach Greinke opposing Jordan Lyles. So we'll keep you updated on how things are going there. As you take a look at the Astros schedule, 2 against the Rangers, then the White Sox, who are certainly one of the contenders in the American League, coming to Minute Maid for 4 games. That will be the return of Dallas Keuchel, who's set to pitch on Sunday, his first trip back to Minute Maid since he departed a couple seasons ago. Then it's on the road, and this is where the Astros, again, not the most difficult in terms of the opponents they'll be facing, but this is where you have to start to take a look at, you're playing a lot of baseball with not a lot of time off. Luckily for the Astros, they got a lot of healthy arms right now. So they visit Baltimore, visit Detroit, then home again for the O's, and then start off the month of July 4th weekend by paying a visit to Cleveland. Then they finally will get an off day, and then it's just 2 series, I believe, after that before the All-Star break. They'll take on Oakland and the Yankees before they finally get to the break in mid-July. But I mentioned a thriller last night. The Astros did not look like they could get much of anything going on offense until Carlos Correa came through in the 9th, and then they were able to win it in the 10th after the Rangers load the bases, and on the second pitch, he saw Jose Altuve sends one into the Crawford boxes, and Dusty Baker alluded to it there. It was his 72nd birthday, and quite the birthday present that he got from his ball club. So happy birthday to Dusty. Also want to send some good wishes to Astros shortstop Carlos Correa, who just announced today that he and his wife Daniela are expecting their first child, and how appropriate that it comes the week of Father's Day. The bad news for the Astros, though, is we learned just a short time ago that outfielder Kyle Tucker is headed to the injured list. He's in the health and safety protocols, which means the team is not allowed to explicitly say, but Dusty has said for the past couple days, Kyle Tucker has not been feeling well. He's been feeling ill, and health and safety protocols typically means some type of exposure to COVID or something that the team needs to look further into, that they are not allowed to say explicitly why he is unavailable or going to the injured list, only that he is in the health and safety protocol. So Abraham Toro called up to replace Kyle Tucker. The big news in baseball, though, obviously, is yesterday MLB finally released its memo. We had heard for a few days that it was coming, that Major League Baseball is looking to crack down on the use of foreign substances in the game. And they sent out a lengthy memo to teams, the new enforcement of these rules that have been on the books for quite some time don't go into effect until Monday. So they're giving teams this week to kind of figure things out, and basically telling teams, stop doing what we know everybody has been doing all throughout baseball for quite some time. Here are some of the highlights. If any pitcher is caught using a foreign substance of some kind, he's automatically ejected from the game and receives a 10-game suspension with pay. Now, the umps are going to inspect pitchers gloves, hats, belt, ball, whatever they need to between innings or whenever there's a pitching change. If you're a starter, there's going to be several mandatory checks throughout the game, not just at the start of a game or when a pitcher leaves. If you're a reliever, that at the end of each inning that you pitch or whenever your appearance is over, that's when the umps will come out and do their check. And then at their own discretion, anytime an umpire feels that he needs to go out there and check something out, and it does not apply to just pitchers. If he wants to check catchers, a position player, anytime the umps want to go out and look for any type of foreign substance, they are allowed to do that. And MLB did explicitly say that they are no longer allowing, or at least kind of turning a blind eye to, guys using sunscreen and rosin. That was kind of the go-to method of an easy way to get some type of adhesive or something that would allow you to get a little bit more tack and grip on the baseball. They said that they are looking for that specifically. Remember, when a lot of this kind of really jumped to the forefront a week or two ago, it was when Giovanni Gallegos for the Cardinals was caught wiping his neck or his hat because he had sunscreen, mix it with a little bit of rosin. Guys have said they've been doing this for years and years. Of course, Tyler Glasnow for the Rays went off on this yesterday, going on about a 4.5-minute diatribe about how he is one of just many pitchers for decades that have been using some type of sticky stuff, and it's not as egregious as perhaps everyone in the game is using when it comes to spider tack or some things, that it's not a matter of increasing spin rate or anything like that. Glasnow said it's as simple as the balls are so inconsistent from ballpark to ballpark or even within a game that you have to find some way to get a grip on the baseball. And he contends that not using any type of adhesive is the reason that he is now dealing with a UCL injury and possibly could have to have Tommy John surgery, because he said he was forced to have to try to grip the ball a lot harder, totally threw off all the muscles in his arms. And that's one of the many reasons that a lot of people around baseball, pitchers specifically, are kind of questioning the way that MLB is going about how they're rolling this out. And that's something that Dusty Baker alluded to yesterday when he was asked about this memo, which he had just gotten his hands on at the time. So here's what Dusty and a few of his players had to say about what Major League Baseball is attempting to do as they try to enforce the rules when it comes to pitchers using illegal substances.
One thing I can say is I wish that they had tried this and done this in spring training and not wait until the middle of the season, because a lot of these guys, I mean, they didn't think that they were doing anything really wrong, actually. You know what I mean? And so now they have to adjust and readjust. And so that's the only thing that I wish that we hadn't waited till the season has started.
Our offense has been doing great, man. I feel like all year we've been pretty consistent throughout the whole year, so we're not focusing on that too much. If pitchers are gonna break less now because of that, I'll take it. But I feel like as an offense, we're doing just fine.
It depends a lot on the player. In my situation, I don't like to use that, but I don't know. It depends a lot on the pitcher. I don't know what kind of things they are going to take, but this is a rule of MLB. We have to follow the rules. We know that MLB wants to play, wants the players play clean, and we are agree about that, and we have to follow the rules.
I'm not the hitter that, every time I'm going to hit, I'm looking at the pitcher to see how many times he touched his glove or his hat or his belt or whatever. I'm just focusing on putting a good at bat. So, like I said, if the numbers are going to get better, talking about the offense right now, we'll take it, but we're not gonna sit here and complain about pitchers using substances, because that's helped the grip, that's also helped their spin rate, and as hitters we're always trying to adjust, so it's no different this time.
And that's a popular refrain we've heard from several batters as far as their feelings on pitchers using foreign substances. Hunter Pence, former Astro, was on the Athletics baseball podcast the other day, and he said he didn't actually mind that. For years he knew that guys would sometimes put something on the ball or on their fingers to get a better grip, because as a hitter, he says he's more worried about a guy who doesn't have control and loses one, and next thing you know, you're looking at a 90+ mile an hour fastball or something coming right at your head. And sadly, we've seen that already in baseball, guys taking one right into their head, face, where it's extremely dangerous. So that's why for so long, batters didn't really seem to mind. And you have to think that that's part of the reason perhaps Major League Baseball turned a bit of a blind eye. And if it was as simple as rosin, maybe a little sunscreen and sweat or something like that, then people weren't as worried. But now when you start to counterbalance that with, there are so many pitchers now who it seems like nearly everyone has a wipeout slider or a ridiculous curveball, and you're starting to see, all right, well, there's one thing to be said about using a little bit of rosin and sunscreen versus guys using spider tack. Or Sports Illustrated had another lengthy article where they interviewed a former Angels clubhouse attendant who is so far the only person who has been put on public notice for his role in using illegal substances, and that he helped concoct it for years and years for players. And so Bubba Harkins' his name. So the reason that he's speaking out is he does not believe he's alone in doing this, and that multiple pitchers over the years have asked him about it and asked for foreign substances. And if it's just a matter of everybody does it, then that's why he did it, because he felt it was his job as the clubhouse attendant. The issue that this all comes down to is baseball cannot find any type of consistency when it comes to the actual baseballs themselves. That you heard Tyler Glasnow talk about it. You've heard Justin Verlander for years has pointed out how different the balls have gotten over the last couple seasons. And that's part of the reason why you're seeing this drop in offense, which is why MLB is looking to reinforce these rules, or to finally start enforcing them. Is they want to see more action, see more hits, more balls just in play. But if you're going from ballpark to ballpark, and it's up to each individual home park how they want to rub up the ball beforehand or get it ready to play, and sometimes the ball feels different and grips differently, that's why you got so many guys that are going to some type of substance to get that tack, to get that traction, to get that grip. So if you think about it in terms of balancing the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law, that's what this issue comes down to. So if you believe guys like Tyler Glasnow, or I know CC Sabathia on his podcast said that he's known of a lot of guys who use some type of substance to get a grip on it. There are plenty of other pitchers who said they don't do that. They don't like it. They've experimented with some type of substance or grip, something or other, to get a better grip on the baseball. But if so many guys say something needs to be done because the balls are inconsistent and it could come down to a health issue, as Glasnow's alleging, then baseball needs to come up with some uniform policy that perhaps the days of using the rosin bag need to change, and that whatever concoction goes into making a rosin bag, maybe you need to update that. Maybe you do need to say pitchers are allowed to put a little bit of this or that, but you can't go too far when it comes to things that are increasing spin rate. And that's where you get into the balance of letter of the law versus spirit of the law. That if you're just using it to get a little bit of extra grip, which is theoretically what the rosin bag's for, that's one thing. If you're using it to all of a sudden you're drastically increasing your spin rate, and now you have this unhittable rising fastball or this wipeout slider, well, then that's an issue. But I think that this is just one small part of what baseball is going to have to try to address in the coming years if they want to increase action and increase offense. There's all kinds of discussion about the shift. We know that they're already experimenting with trying to ban the shift at some of the minor league levels to see how that goes. Part of it is just the approach that so many guys and so many teams take in terms of 3 true outcomes, that everything is either a strikeout, a walk, or a home run. So you don't have many guys that are trying to put the ball in play. And then as Pete Alonso of the Mets talked about when this was brought up a week ago, the fact that Major League Baseball has gone to deadening the balls that don't carry quite as much, that's perhaps contributing to why you're seeing this drop in offense. But as it pertains to the Astros, at least, you just heard Carlos Correa say it, they got an offense that's working, and whatever rules baseball does finally enforce and whatever changes they do make, the guys who are good are the guys who figure out how to adjust and how to adapt. And so the batters who know what they're doing are able to adapt to balls that all of a sudden have a little bit more break on them. And just as Jacob deGrom and some of the game's best pitchers figure out a way to still get outs without having to use spider tack or anything like that. I do want to get one more in from the Stros on this, and that's Dusty Baker. Again, this was yesterday after he was going over the memo for the first time. He said he had yet to actually sit around with the whole team and have a discussion or anything like that about it. But he was asked about enforcing these rules and why it is kind of always just been this dirty little secret in baseball that seemingly every pitching staff has somebody who has or is currently using some type of foreign substance. Here's what Dusty had to say about how MLB turns a blind eye to what is technically in the rule book.
A lot of things in the rule book, man. You're not supposed to break the speed limit either, but you do. You know what I'm saying? You know, I mean, there's a lot of rules that haven't been adhered to, or to which degree. You know, I mean, that's the whole thing. I mean, are you allowed to, is going 15 miles an hour over the speed limit any less than going, you don't usually get a ticket if you're going 3 to 5 over the speed limit, but you go 5 to 15, now you don't get a ticket. You know what I mean? So it's a matter of, you know, whoever's making the rules and adhering to the rules, and then changing the rules and then enforcing the rules.
Again, Dusty Baker from yesterday, and MLB is going to have to figure this out. And it's really not a great time for baseball, because not only do you have a lot of people who are questioning the manner in which they're rolling this out, and you also have a lot of people who say something needs to be done, that some of these pitchers, their spin rates are out of control because of things they've been doctoring up the baseball with. You have an upcoming labor dispute that seemingly everybody in the game is already talking about. It's fait accompli that there's going to be some type of strike or work stoppage next year. And then, as we just alluded to, there's all kinds of issues with offense is down across the board in Major League Baseball. And we know that the viewing numbers and the popularity of the game have all waned over the last decade and are continuing to go in the wrong direction. So MLB needs to find a way to get some consistency in its rules, in the way it's enforced, and keep this game going so that they can start to bring fans back and get everybody excited about baseball, instead of right now all you're hearing is what's going on with guys cheating, with teams cheating, and how they're enforcing the rules and guys getting hurt. So one of just the many problems that baseball is facing right now. One other baseball note we do want to touch on briefly. You might have seen this. Ryan Spader, he's a baseball author, went on a Twitter rant today about how he's talked to a number of players that this latest instance of guys doctoring baseballs is just one of many instances of teams constantly trying to get ahead. And Spader went off saying that the Astros are not the only ones who were using some type of video system when it came to trying to guess pitches or tip guys off to pitches. He named the Royals specifically in 2015 when they won the World Series, that he talked to guys that said they had a whole video room set up that year and the year after. He mentioned the New York Yankees and brought up Aaron Judge's home versus road splits in 2017 versus 2018, and how much better Aaron Judge was at home versus away. Chase Utley, Adrian Beltre, two of the all-time greats. He named the Texas Rangers. So you're seeing that a lot of the problems in baseball that they try to attribute to, oh, it's just Garrett Cole, it's just Trevor Bauer, it's just the Houston Astros. It looks like there's a whole lot of issues that baseball needs to try to find a way to clean up, or at least get everybody on the same page, because you can't just brush things aside and hope that they'll go away when it looks like there are myriad issues within the sport as terms of teams trying to get an edge. All right, did want to quickly touch on the NBA. Some big news across the league, not just one or two stories, but Kawhi Leonard added to the list of superstars who are now injured. The Clippers don't know exactly how serious it is, but by all reports, it is an ACL injury. He's out indefinitely. They're just waiting to see if and when he could come back to play, but that drastically changes their outlook and the outlook for the playoffs, because Kawhi, after they even things up, the Clips did in that series with the Mavs, he went to a completely different level and has been the Kawhi that most people expect and are used to seeing in the playoffs the last few years. And he was the one that had the Clips in the driver's seat to possibly going to the finals out of the West. And now, if you did not think that things were wide open in the Western Conference, they certainly are now that Kawhi Leonard is down, and the Suns, who have already booked their trip to the Western Conference Finals, just found out that CP3 is out indefinitely due to health and safety protocols. So they don't know exactly if or when the point guard would be back, but that's a huge blow to a Suns team that was rolling all of a sudden. And if you missed it earlier today, LeBron James had a lengthy Twitter tirade, not about CP3, speaking specifically about Kawhi, but about how this is something that he and several other people in the league, but certainly everybody knows that LeBron James moves the needle more than anyone else when it comes to the NBA. He pointed this out back in the winter when the NBA kind of came out of nowhere or surprised a lot of people when they said, no, we're going to go ahead and start the next season up just less than 2 months really after the previous season ended because of COVID and the long layoff in 2020. And then the fact that they wanted to try to get at least 72 games into this regular season. Players did not get an extended offseason, and it's something that LeBron pointed out at the time, and it has come to fruition that you're seeing a ton of injuries, because it's not just that they didn't get the off time, it's that they then had to play a very compressed schedule. And so you've seen the likes of LeBron and AD, James Harden and Kyrie Irving, now Kawhi Leonard, and a number of superstars at the pivotal time for the NBA. The NBA playoffs is where they really make their money, and what draws the most eyeballs is to be able to watch the best of the best when it matters most. And now so many of the NBA's biggest stars are out as a result of what seems to be, in the case of Kawhi Leonard, yet another non-contact injury. It's one thing to say, yes, injuries happen, but the amount of injuries that you've seen this year, you have to just wonder if perhaps LeBron was right back when he said something in December. All right, do want to briefly get one note in here on the Texans. Of course, they're supposed to have a small mini camp this week. They decided last week at their OTAs that they were going to forego that. Here is head coach David Culley explaining what went into that decision and why the Texans are one of 4 teams across the NFL who canceled their mandatory minicamp this summer.
We felt like that we needed to make sure that for at least a good 4 weeks during the off season, that we had as many players as here as possible, this being voluntary, to be able to learn our culture, learn our system, new defense, all of the different players that we've had. And so what we did a month ago is we had our team leaders earlier in the off season came to an agreement that it was more important for us to make sure that we had as many people as we needed to be here possible to be able to learn what we're doing. And with that being said, that we would forego the mini camp because we felt like that was more important. And that's why we decided not to do the mini camp, because our attendance has been great for us here. We've got accomplished what we wanted to get accomplished. We felt like that getting them here was more important than being able to just have those 2.5 days of mini camp. And we feel like we got that done.
So that was David Culley last week, and you could hear him allude to it, that this was something that they had kind of talked about with at least a number of the veterans beforehand. Remember, the NFL Players Association has been going back and forth with the league for a while about trying to avoid players going to mini camps and to workouts this summer, because remember, if players work out on their own and they should get injured, they do not have to, their team does not have to cover them. There's all kinds of things in the contract that a workout, an injury sustained in a workout away from the team, they're not liable for what goes on. And the NFLPA is, they were still, when they initially started negotiating all this months ago, because we still had so much we did not yet know about COVID and how it was going to affect the upcoming season. It was one of the many reasons the Players Association was trying to avoid players having to go to some of these off-season workouts. And so you have to think that that's part of the reason, since there was such apprehension from the Players Association and thus the players, that's why the Texans were one of, if not, there's 4 teams now that have decided to forego their mini camp. There's a few others that cut their mini camp short. I get the optics of this as far as the Texans won only 4 games a year ago. They're projected to be one of the 4 or 5 worst teams this upcoming season, since it does not look like Deshaun Watson will be playing for them. So I get the understanding of, you need to be out there, you need to be practicing, you need to be getting better, but 2.5 days of practice and just shorts or shells in the middle of June is not going to be the difference as to why the Texans all of a sudden win 9 or 10 games as opposed to only winning 2, 3, 4 games this upcoming season. So I get why fans are upset, and certainly you want to see your team and your franchise start to take the steps it needs to in the right direction. But canceling a few workouts in the middle of June, I don't think is a big a deal as perhaps when you really boil it all down in the end. That's not going to be the reason that the Texans do or do not become a Super Bowl contender. Down the road, yes, you want to start building the right culture. But if David Culley and his staff say, we've had a bunch of guys in for rookie camp and OTAs, they've started doing all that, they got to look at guys, the type of workouts they're doing now for, again, it would be 3 at most, but usually it's only about 2.5 days. The coaches said that they work out with the team in full for the off-season mandatory mini camps. That's not going to be the reason that the Texans missed the playoffs in 2021. All right, so that's going to do it for this installment of the Fox 26 Sports Stream. Again, thank you for joining us, whether it was on our Facebook or YouTube pages or at fox26houston.com. As always, for all the latest sports updates, be sure to follow our sports director on Twitter. He is at Mark Berman, Fox 26. I'm Sal Manine. We'll see you again next week.